Can the Georgia Bulldogs actually win if it is Gunnar Stockton that's the quarterback for this playoff run? And it looks like that's going to be the case at the very minimum for the Sugar Bowl. That's what the reporting is, and that's what we think is going to happen. So this offense looks different with Gunnar Stockton. This team looks different with Gunnar Stockton. You got to see a little bit of that against Texas. But the real question is, can they do it for 3 games? Can they win 3 huge games on neutral sites and win the whole thing with Gunnar Stockton out there? At the end of the day, it would have been the same question with Carson Beck, right? Because year 1 with Carson Beck as a starter in 2023, Georgia loses the SEC championship game. They lost the SEC championship game and got knocked out of the playoff because of that. They win the Sugar Bowl. They crush a team that, not Florida State's real team. I think Georgia would have won that game anyway, but that's besides the point. We don't really know if it would have happened with Carson Beck out there. At the end of the day, we don't really know the truth there. But the real question is, this is an even more of an unknown because Gunnar Stockton has started 0 games. He started 0 games in his college career, and his first start is now going to be in the Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame or Indiana, right? Two good football teams. 2 teams that I think Georgia can beat, but nonetheless, they're both very good squads, and it won't be in Sanford Stadium. It won't be in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It'll be down at the Caesars Superdome, right? Isn't that what we're calling it now? They'll be down at the Superdome in New Orleans at night. This offense looks different with Gunnar Stockton. And the truth is, Georgia's offense has been all over the place. There's been games where it's looked really good and looked like it could be explosive. But honestly, more often than not, Georgia's offense has been disappointing. And it hasn't been just because of Carson Beck. It has been the whole ordeal. Injuries, running backs, ETN, Branson Robinson, Roderick Robinson. You're dealing with a freshman running back in Nate Frazier, who is very, very talented, has had his issues. Cash Jones is one of the other primary backs. And then on the outside, with the weapons you've got, they're just not as good as what they were the last few years and what we grew accustomed to seeing in the red and black. No Bowers, no McConkey, no Kyrus Jackson, no Marcus. Even those guys would have helped out, right? Because they are reliable. And Georgia leads the country in drop passes. And the tight end play hasn't been what you thought it would be with Oscar Delp. Starting to come along here over the last month or so, right? It's been a couple weeks since we've been in the season now. But Georgia's offense has been all over the place. And now it's new with Gunnar Stockton. It will be ran differently. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post talking about Gunnar Stockton, and if he can take Georgia back to Atlanta and to beat who I would think will probably be Oregon. We can go through the bracket, and I'll go through my predictions a little bit in this as well, just kind of talking about it. It'll help me guide you through what I think would happen. With Gunnar, this offense is going to run the ball more. They at least are going to try to do that, right? We saw that in the second half against Texas. What changed? What changed was they ran the ball a lot, and they ran a lot of options, and they ran a lot of RPO, and all of the passing was close to, at, near the line of scrimmage. And that changes things for Georgia's offense. You saw against Texas that they didn't try to push downfield. Is that going to be the theme throughout the whole playoffs? No, it's not. Because I've watched a lot of Gunnar Stockton at Rabin. I saw how much they use the vertical passing game. It helps when you're a 2A school and you have superior talent and you're playing other 2A, this is the classes in high school, a 2A school that you're airing it out with guys like Braxton Hicks and wide receivers that have been walk-ons. Braxton Hicks is a former walk-on at Georgia, guys like that. And Gunnar Stockton, obviously running around. This is a guy that's way up there in the record books in high school, but we're out of high school now. It's in college, and all we've seen from him is a tiny bit of garbage time this season, tiny bit. And one of the problems with that is Georgia didn't dominate teams the way you would think it would, the way it probably should have. And in turn, they didn't turn to Gunnar Stockton in garbage time very often because Carson Beck had to play more than Georgia wanted him to this season. So he's underdeveloped. You saw in the second half against Florida State, against just a bad Florida State team and a bad group of Florida State backups at that point, they Immediately, they want to run option football with him. They want to run the ball. They want to run the ball with Gunner. They did a little bit of downfield passing, and we saw him throw a nice ball to Anthony Evans in the end zone, about a 20, 30-yard pass near the red zone. And I've seen it, like I said, we're moving on from high school, but I've seen him capable of throwing these nice passes. It'll be different against a college defense, but certainly Georgia's offense looks different and is maybe it's more dynamic in a way to where, yes, you have the element of Gunner Stockton running the football. You have the element of you have to respect his legs on those option plays. He might not just hand it off to Etienne or Frazier. He might take it himself, and he might lower the shoulder as well. You saw with the amount of QB draws in an empty set. Georgia now has more plays it can run out of an empty set. Just assuming that they would run the same pass plays out there with Gunner Stockton instead of Carson Beck. So this offense still has dynamic capabilities. It's just a matter of, is it going to be good enough vertically? Because I look at it this way, and I'll pull it up for you guys. I'll pull the bracket up. I look at this bracket, and I'm just thinking, can they do it 3 times? They're going to play Indiana or Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl here. Indiana has a really, really good run defense. If Indiana, I don't think it's going to happen, and we did our picks, and I don't think you've seen our picks video at this point, but I've got Notre Dame winning this game. I've got them covering the spread, too. I think Notre Dame wins by about 10 points. But that might not happen, right? It might be Indiana. Indiana's got one of the best rush defenses in college football. I think they're allowing just 71 yards per game. And against a pretty good rushing attack in Ohio State, they got beat in kind of a weird way against Ohio State, but they held them to around 100, 120 yards. Georgia might be a more run-heavy team now with Gunner Stockton. Would that be a problem? At the end of the day, Georgia, I think, would just have more athletes, and I think that would probably be the case either way. Notre Dame, as much as I think that they could give Georgia problems the way that Georgia Tech did, I don't think that's going to happen twice for Georgia. I think Georgia wins this game. So then the question becomes, is it Penn State, SMU, or Boise State that they end up playing? It might not be the Orange Bowl. It could be the Cotton Bowl. This is just a filler on this bracket, but I don't think this is decided which bowl would be which. If they end up playing Boise State or Penn State, I think that Georgia could certainly score on Boise State. Boise State simply has only seen one offense even close to it in terms of athletes, and that's Oregon's. Against Penn State, that's a really good front seven, guys. That's a really good front seven. We've seen some teams struggle against them. We've seen some teams be able to put up a lot of points. Oregon put up a lot of points. How did they do it, though? They did it with really dynamic weapons on the outside. And Georgia doesn't have that. So I think that once you get into that next round, you do start to question, okay, can Gunner Stockton lead this team? This is a Georgia channel. All right, if you're here listening, listen to me very carefully. This is a Georgia channel. We cover Georgia. Obviously, I went to Georgia. You know how I feel about the team. This is going to be extremely difficult. And people keep referencing 2017. Oh, Jacob Eason got hurt, and Jake Fromm led them to the national championship. In 2021, you get the same thing with JT Daniels and Stetson Bennett. And he led them to the national championship. They never winning that one. This is just a theme for Georgia. Now a new backup quarterback is going to come in and lead them to the national championship. This is more difficult than that because you've got a guy that hasn't started a game. Jake Fromm started his first game at the beginning of the season, and they got the whole year, and he had Nick Chubb and Sony Michel running wild, and obviously a very good defense and better weapons, if we're being quite frank. This is different. And in certain ways, Georgia's more talented. In certain ways, it's less talented than that team. It's certainly less talented than the 2021 team that Stetson Bennett led. And I think that more than just Stetson Bennett could have led that team. It's just the truth. Stetson was great. He was awesome. I think that more than one quarterback could have done that with that roster. Let's say that Georgia does get by Penn State or Boise State or SMU, whoever it ends up being. I think that they would certainly beat SMU and Boise State. I think Penn State is when it gets a little bit more complicated. I would take the Dogs in that. Is it going to be Oregon? Is it going to be Texas in the national championship? Is it going to be Oregon, who has been the best team in college football this year and one of the best offenses in college football? Is it going to be Texas, a team that they played twice and they now have to beat for a third time? Is it going to be a Tennessee rematch? I don't think that's going to happen. Can Georgia do this 3 times over the next month and a half? Month, I guess. That's a tall task. And that's a lot to ask of an offense and a lot to ask of a guy who is not Georgia's original quarterback, and there's a reason why they had Carson back out there. It's on paper, it's a downgrade. So I think this is going to be really difficult. Georgia's coaching and Georgia's roster gives me faith that they can pull this off. The national championship being in Atlanta, if Georgia can get there, gives me faith that this team can pull it off. If they have Gunner prepared, this is going to be a dynamic offense that maybe unlocks some things. And you have to take that angle at it too. Maybe Gunner can unlock some things for this Georgia offense. But what I'm saying is this is going to be really hard. And I don't want Georgia fans to just assume that they're going to get there. I think they got a really good chance to do it, though. And if you guys want, I'll do a whole bracket prediction. Do you want that? Let me know in the comments down below. Check the link down below. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post. Thanking you for watching.